They buried me in the water and I came, I knew. Ha ha. Now I'm baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, I'm a winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. See, I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, I'm a winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. See, I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue.
What's up, sheepdog? Welcome to the Changing the Culture podcast. That was my boy at One Time Music. Go look him up on all the socials, Instagram. You can go find all of his music. That song is called Baptized in Blue. You're going to be able to listen to that at the end of this podcast episode. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you enjoy One Time's music. He's a fellow police officer. He's the man. I love this guy. Go listen to his shit. What's up, Sheepdog Nation? I'm so excited to bring you this episode of Changing the Culture podcast with me, Autumn Clifford. Today we have El Moreno. Did I pronounce that right?
It's Moreno.
Moreno. And he is a former police officer. He's going to introduce himself to you, but he wrote a book. It's called LA's Last Street Cop. I'm really excited about this. Al, tell us all about you.
Well, I'm a former Los Angeles police officer. Before that, I was in the United States Marine Corps at the height of the Vietnam War, 1968-69, served with the Indian Company 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines as a rifleman and radio man.
Wow.
Prior to that, I was raised in the main streets of Los Angeles, adjacent to the Watts area, and 8 brothers, 4 sisters, and in a home something like under 800 square feet.
Wow.
Oh, it was a real ride.
Okay, sorry. I didn't hear the last thing. I just wanted to make sure. It's not you. It goes in and out.
Okay.
Al, tell me about your career. So you worked for LAPD?
Correct. Now, after trying to get on the department from September the 17th, 1970, I wasn't hired until August of 1975. I overcame 9 separate erroneous medical disqualifications and hold the record for being the most successful since 1869.
Wow.
Finally got on the job. They weren't hiring a lot of people of color and women back in the day. So once I got on the department, I was just born to be a cop. I immediately excelled right out of the academy under probation, completed my probation, went to Venice Division, then was wheeled to Hollywood Division, worked specialized units the whole time. And then in 1978, I was one of 40 guys from the entire department to work LAPD's first ever gang suppression unit, Operation Central Bureau Crash. That was 5 of the 18 geographical divisions that were mostly plagued with the gang violence, East Los Angeles and South Central.
Wow. What was that like?
Anywhere from 1 to 3 homicides per day we handled. Well, I'm sorry, I should say shootings. And obviously a lot of them resulted in homicides. Up into 5 some hot days. But that's all we did was monitor and attempted to suppress the gang insanity in Los Angeles. Statistically, Los Angeles is the gang capital of the world. That's been established. So it was mayhem for 4 years. And then to fast forward, the statistics were going right through the roof. Crime reports, which isn't good for business. It isn't good for property sales. So the city fathers started bitching at the mayor. The mayor's, getting into the city council. City council gets into the chief. And then it comes rolling downhill to our lieutenant. And what he did, like any good crook would do, he starts cooking the books to lower the crime statistics. It got to one point where half the unit of these super cops transferred out because of the, the lack of integrity.
Wow.
Excuse me. And I was crushing it. I loved it. I stayed, and ultimately went to the bureau commander to, for him to do something about it. And he said, Al, is there anybody else that'll listen to you or back you up? I'm sorry. And I said, well, we got 4 supervisors. 2 of them are just terrific. I'll see if they want to throw their careers under the bus. Anyhow, they talked to the commander for about 2 hours after I did, and they backed up my story 100%. And heads were going to roll. There was going to be what they call a board of inquiry. And just at that time, I was working homicide. I had a take-home car, living in Hermosa Beach, living a good life. Got beeped up on a drive-by murder. And we arrested this one gang member from the Avenues for cutting a 14-year-old kid in half with a sawed-off. There was another shooter with a .357 Magnum, and the driver of the killer car was Alex Aguirre, and he eventually became the president of La M, which is the Mexican mafia. So these were heavyweight gangsters. So yeah, we arrested, we 28 hours on this particular homicide, search warrant, the whole thing. We arrest one of the 3 shooters, which was the main shooter, the guy in the right rear seat, Arnold Aguirre with a 12-gauge shotgun. And while I was interviewing him, we had a witness, which was just really, really unusual, because normally nobody will step up to the plate because basically they're signing their own death warrant.
Yeah.
Well, this very, very honorable, courageous little 16-year-old actually told us exactly, because he was sitting right next to the decedent when he was hit with 2 blasts with a shotgun. And he named the shooter. I knew the shooter. I had arrested him before. I had arrested his brother before. And so anyway, we took him into custody, and I told this new guy that came into the unit that, we don't even have to talk to this guy. We're dead tired. Let's go home, get a couple of hours sleep. We'll come back and scoop up the other two murderers. And he said, no, let's interview him, see if we can get some information. And he outranked me, so okay, fine. So I go in there. This time I play the good guy, bad guy, grab him by the lapels and push him against the wall, and then shifting towards his chair. Then I walk out like I was going to lose my temper and kick his butt. And this is where your opponent's supposed to go. Oh, you're really pissed off Moreno. You're going to get 30 years, blah, 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 this and that. And as this new guy came out, talked to me, he says, Moreno, you physically assaulted that arrestee under color of authority, and I'm going to the old man with it. Well, he knew that me and the lieutenant were at war because I had rolled him over. They call it's whistleblowing, but they didn't call it that back then in the day, and there were no protections for that. So I was on the menu. And 2 weeks later, I went to the Colorado River water skiing with a bunch of cops and stewardesses, and I've been going there since '68, so I knew the whole layout, the whole place really well. I met a kid that I hadn't seen since high school. He had a 23-foot boat. He invited my entire LAPD party. We went bar hopping down the river. We walk into this bar called the Moonshine. Unbeknownst to us, it's a hangout for the Aryan Brotherhood.
Oh.
And by supremacists. And I looked at this kid, and his name was Woody. I said, what in the hell are you doing bringing us to a place like this? So a couple of the people got a drink, the non-policemen, they didn't know what's going on. And then within a short time, this one monster, Crazy Jerry, AKA the Skull Crusher, just paroled from prison for cutting his wife's head off with an axe with a 9-page rap sheet. This guy was a monster, 6'4", 260, wasn't wearing a shirt so he could show off his battle scars and knife wounds and gunshots or what have you. One scary looking monster. And so we decided to get the hell out of there. And I was tailing Charlie to make sure that all my friends were getting out. And just before I got to the door, he grabs me with this monster vice grip, wheels me around, and goes to take my head off. I go into him like the Tasmanian devil. He didn't go down. It just scared the hell out of me.
Oh.
So before you know it, the whole bar was just going crazy. There was a fight like you'd see on some movie or TV. At one point, I got him in a bar arm, trying to render him unconscious to get, to save my life.
Wow.
And he started to wane, go a little unconscious. I let go, and we all scatter out. Everybody runs in different directions. He runs to his vehicle, gets a sawed-off shotgun, and comes at us.
No.
And right before he got his shot off. Boom, we dived into the water. One of our party came running because everybody was in different directions. When I made my way back onto the land on shore, this one girl came up to us, part of our party, said that he's got a hostage, that they ran back into the bar after he went us with a shotgun. So she's, in my mind, it's a copper. She was a copper as well. That he's going to get her, he's going to rape her, then he's going to blow her brains out. This is way before cell phones. So I go knocking on this trailer park over in the Colorado River, and finally somebody lets me in. I ID myself. I says I got to put an officer needs help call. We got a hostage situation. And then I thought to myself, after I put the help call out, I don't know how long it's going to be before the police roll, and by then she'll be dead. So I asked him if he got any firearms in the house. He gives me a stolen 30-30 rifle that we ascertained later on. And he was also an ex-con. And so I go back there. I see the two bad guys. The biggest guy's got his back to me. I scream at him, and to get down. I give them my police stuff to get down. They do it by the numbers. They've done it so many times. I walk up to them, and I know it's just a matter of time. So before the cavalry arrives, and I just put them on ice. So here comes 3 different law enforcement agencies rolling code 3, and the lead officer, Deputy Lee, a female with a shotgun, she screams out to all her brother officers, "It's Crazy Jerry." So everybody knew this guy. He had been doing this kind of stuff all the time. By the way, 2 hours before we went to the bar, he was in the bar showing off his 12-gauge shotgun. And not a single person in that bar called the police. So you could imagine the type of people that were in that.
Yes, right.
So that was a heaven sent for the department. They got those 2 incidents, sent it to Internal Affairs, and this was a way to get rid of me so that investigation wouldn't go on. 2 of the Internal Affairs investigators were overheard at the outset of their investigation that were, quote, "We're going to fry Moreno's ass." And I got a declaration, by the way, from the person that heard that. It was a female secretary in their office. She told a female secretary in our office, told me. And then a week before the trial board, they sent me to the trial board, the actual guy that was going to put on the case, a sergeant, an advocate from Internal Affairs, was heard by a former partner of mine. I know this sounds pretty crazy, but one of the other IED investigators happened to be one of my training officers back in the day, and he heard this advocate saying, "Moreno's going to get fired regardless of the evidence." So I was done. It was over, even before it started. Anyhow, they took the word of these 2 murderers and fired me.
No.
But one really, really obnoxious thing is that when the 2 Internal Affairs investigators interviewed this monster at his mother's house in Ontario, California, he told them to their face, and it's on page 63 in the IED 109-page report, that I already got my homies from La M, the Mexican Mafia. We know that Moreno's working gangs, and I'm going to kill him. Well, you're a former copper, so you know that satisfies the statute for attempted murder.
Yeah.
You took an overt step in killing somebody, but you weren't successful. Those 2 IED guys, they didn't arrest him. They walked away, and they told their lieutenant told a captain told the bureau commander went up to the chief's office. Automatically, Metro, they rolled the security protocol, 0. In essence, Los Angeles Police Department sanctioned the Aryan Brotherhood to murder one of their own. I never once got any security, nor did my family.
Wow.
And that's all documented in the book, LA's Last Street Cop.
So, Al, how long were you on the job for?
7 years before I got fired.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And and if I missed it, I apologize. Did you end up getting the female hostage that he had?
Turned out that when the 2 females in our party ran to the back of the bar, they hid behind a Dipsy dumpster. One of the girls stood up to get a better look at this animal as he was taking his shotgun and breaking it down and loading it, and she fell back and smacked her head against the wall of the bar. He turned around, went at them. They ran. That's when they ran into the bar. So one of the two, Dolores, exited the bar, ran down the river, and that's where she seen me. And that's when she told me that he's got Patty hostage. Turns out that before he went in the bar, she made her way through a tiny little window and ran off somewhere. We didn't see her for, until it was well over. So in essence, she was never really held as a hostage, but in my mind,
Yeah, absolutely.
I went up there, I went to go rescue or to assist a brother officer, and a female in this case.
And so that's why they fired you?
They fired me for being in the fight with the ex-con and pushing the murder suspect. And by the way, I had never had an excessive beef for excessive force ever. And at the 5.5-year juncture, I had accumulated 71 commendations.
Wow.
71. More than half of them for arresting gang members that were armed. And it says in one of my rating reports, Officer Moreno recovers more firearms than anybody in the unit, although has avoided an officer-involved shooting. It got to one point, one 13-day period, we call them deployment periods, 13 of 28 days, I arrested a gang member with a gun, and on the 13th day, I arrested 2 separate gang members with 45s. My supervisors called me in out of the field and told me, Al, this is like, I've never seen anything like this before. He says, and as good as you are, Murphy's Law is going to kick in. You're too hot. You're going to take a bullet in the head. We would like to ask you to work the desk just to cool off for a while. And I said, oh, hell no. I'm having the time of my life. And I went out. So all of the ratings, and the rating reports are very comprehensive. They're signed by several different supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, at that time, they had a rating status for officers that you get every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it was outstanding, satisfactory, and the other one. But only 10% were able in the entire department to be classified at the 10%. I was one of the 10%ers. So I was as honest as you can possibly be as a police officer.
So then what happened? Like, who had a vendetta? You said that you and the lieutenant didn't get along?
Yeah, me and the lieutenant, and when I went before the board, when I went to the commander of the bureau,
Mm-hmm.
the word was out that he was going to initiate what they call a board of inquiry, which meant that several people were going to take a fall for acquiescing to him suppressing the true crime statistics, because I was able to prove it, and so were the 2 sergeants. So when I got into those 2 incidents, they sent me to trial board and fired me, and there was never a board of inquiry. In fact, the commander was transferred, that I spoke to, Commander Croker was transferred from the bureau commander 3 days after I was fired, and hush, nothing more.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing since then?
Well, I got heavy into heroin, and then I didn't do the drug thing or the alcohol thing, which is pretty remarkable.
Very remarkable. Yeah.
So what I did is I actually doubled up on my workouts. I'm a workout freak. And,
Really?
And in fact, I was the first 69-year-old ever to qualify for the American Ninja Warrior show on TV.
No shit.
5 years ago, yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but anyhow, what I did is I embraced my Catholicism, my working out, and what I did is that I walked through the fire. 2 years after I was terminated, I had applied for like 19 PDs or police departments. Culver City Police Department, which is one of the 93 cities in the county of Los Angeles, hired me from 9 other guys. And I was the only one that had been fired. So I really had to establish, my innocence. They did their own independent investigation. They looked at my killer record, and I was hired. So I was with Culver City for 2 weeks, and I pulled a pin.
You did?
It was much too Mayberry for me.
Really?
I was habituated to this insanity. It was a lovely little police department. but it just wasn't a good fit. And I quit 2 weeks after. By the way, I took a polygraph. Obviously, they made me take a polygraph as to these allegations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I passed the polygraph.
Mm.
And then just 2 years ago, I took another polygraph asking those questions. I passed that as well. And I petitioned every chief of police from Gates to present, including Villaraigosa and Garcetti and the city council,
Mm-hmm.
for request for rehearing, and nobody will touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Hmm. What do you
So I
think that
became a
means?
private investigator.
So you
To
became
to answer your question.
how long you been being a PI?
Well, I've been a PI since '85.
Wow.
Global investigations, and I specialize in unsolved crimes, and I've been all over the U.S. and to different countries. It's great stuff, but it's still not my beloved LAPD.
Yeah.
When I talk about the LAPD, I'm talking my brothers and sisters that are out there in their black and whites, putting it on the line 24/7 for people they don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
My my quarrel is with a certain niche in the very hierarchy or staff management of Los Angeles Police Department. But my personal experience with my brothers and sisters, they're the best our Lord ever created. They're the greatest human beings in the world.
Mm. Well, and you know, I really have to say, so obviously you're on Changing the Culture podcast. And so what I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about that hierarchy, and I want to talk to you about the culture. What do you think? Like, what led to that? And do you think it's still happening today?
It's systemic, and a police department is no different than corporate America. It's kind of two sets of rules. You know, once you get into the commander area of it, captains and commanders and deputy chiefs, it becomes a political thing. And they will, and this is from personal experience. So there's two standards and of discipline and also it's gotten so incredibly political today. So staff management listens to the mayor and his whims, okay? And we live in a sanctuary city right here. So it's to hell with the rank and file, and they just basically, you know, protect their butts. Same thing, kind of like an analogy would be Washington, D.C. You got some of these people, the Congress and the Senate, that have been in office for 2, 3, and 4 decades.
Yeah.
And after that long, it just becomes corrupt.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing with Los Angeles Police Department. But I'm not talking ill of, when I say the Los Angeles Police Department, I'm not talking about my brothers and sisters out on the street. I'm talking about a handful of very unethical managers. That's what I'm talking about.
And are they still in there, you think? Or
it's even worse now because I think it was about 8 years ago, or the police commission would choose who the chief of police is going to be. Well, they changed the city charter, and it's now the mayor that picks the police chief. And so the police chief works for the mayor, and it becomes 100% political.
Yeah.
And there's no separation there. And it's awful. Just awful.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. What do you think the culture, is like now? Is like, how do I want to say this? Like, do you think that there's a lot of corruption going on?
Can you be a little more specific on corruption?
Well, so, you know, let me tell you my experience. So my experience, I'm from Maine, very small police departments. The biggest police department we have is like 325 people, our Maine State Police. I think
I've been to Maine.
Yeah.
Beautiful community.
It is beautiful, but I'm just saying, I can't even I can't even wrap my head around like LAPD, right? How many, you know what I'm saying? That's that's bigger than my entire state. Like, like one police force is more than my entire state has for officers. So I'm just saying, like, it seems to me like from like my little, you know, state, it just seems like there could be a lot. Like you've got gangs, you've got all this stuff going on, right? And then you
Right.
have like, and we have our, we see the movies and the video, just shit. Like, it just seems like there could be like undetected corruption that goes on all the time there.
Corruption kind of being maybe a conspiratorial thing, or corruption. If you could just basically ask me, Al, do they do this, or do they do that, or do they, when you're talking about corruption, because corruption is such a big tent,
Yeah. I mean, like, is it the culture over there to do, like, for road cops to do like shit unethically?
Well, when I was on the police department, there were some terrible things that happened by corrupt cops.
Yeah.
Again, a police department is just like any other major corporation, and there's going to be, unethical behavior by all these parties. But I mean, there was one LAPD cop that was actually robbing banks, off duty. And when I'm laughing, I'm just laughing at the insanity of it.
Yeah.
There was another that was actually a contract shooter for a gang. There was when I was working in the Hollywood division, there were 6 cops that were actually they were working morning watch when nobody's around. For your audience, which is like 12 at night to 7 in the morning when it's the quietest. And they'd get a slingshot and smack a window where they were selling locked electronic goods, and alarm would go off. We call it a code 30 in LA. It goes to automatic goes to our communications. Communication comes out to a radio call, 6827C, code 30, this particular. So we'd go there looking around, and 90% of the time they were just, false calls. But in this case, the windows were broken. So the bad guys would roll to the, to the burglary. And if another car got it that wasn't part of their group, they would buy the call from them. And we're just right around the corner, we'll take it for you. And of course, the other car would go, okay, fine. And so they would ransack it, put all the stuff in the trunk of the police car, and then somehow get into the trunk of their car. And after about like 9 months, they were finally caught. So yes, there are corrupt cops. Now, let's get to more specific. Are there policemen that are racist? Are there policemen that exclusively look to harm somebody of color? I can tell you from my personal, and I worked in just the short, almost 7 years, I worked 7 divisions. Normally in 20 years, you'll work 2 or 3. But because I was working crash, I worked 5, plus I worked, Venice and Hollywood. And I can tell you before God that couple of times I've heard some pretty degrading sorts of things. And of course, we're talking in the 70s, in the very earliest, where I would hear them say something disparaging about a black man. But when I actually worked with them or around them, I never seen anything that we would call, I've got this particular stimulus to do this to this particular race of people. Although that does happen, it does happen. But maybe they didn't do it in front of me because I was, I'm Hispanic. I don't know. And I was very, very, somebody that normally wouldn't be cowed by, I don't care who the hell I work with, right? Maybe that has to do with it. But I can only speak from my personal experience. And I've met cops throughout the United States. And I've met cops all through England, all through Australia. I spent a lot of time there, met a lot of coppers there. And race relations today, Autumn, are nowhere like they used to be in the 50s in Selma, Alabama. Hell no. Race relations have never been, and I know this is probably going to blow some fuses, but I have personally never seen them better today than ever before for people of color and women as well. I just haven't seen it. It is not Selma, Alabama anymore.
Yeah.
We are the first Western nation to actually vote a black man as our president.
Mm-hmm.
None of the other Western countries have ever done that. Not once, twice. We got people of color, black and brown, in the Supreme Court, for God's sakes.
Mm-hmm.
Fortune 500, 100s, doctors, attorneys, lawyers. It is the best place ever for our brothers and sisters of color today. And I'm talking, I was raised in the hood in the 50s in a gang-infested area. I was in the curfew zone in the 1965 Watts riots. I was just out of high school. So I've seen this firsthand. This is something that I've seen or heard or like to think of. I'm talking from my personal experience.
Yeah.
And God, I'm not going to bullshit you or anybody else. I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So you said that you were in high school. Like, wait, time out. I want to go back. Tell me about how you grew up. I know you faced a ton of adversity, which probably I would like to know if you thought that made you the hell of a cop that you were on LAPD and able to relate to people on the street. Do you think that's because of how you grew up?
Absolutely. I mean, I was raised in a particular area where this one gang was just dominant. It was called Florencia 13. It was a murderous lot. I seen my first homicide before I was in the first grade. Some kid that was butchered up. He was only like about 15 or 16. It was really grotesque. You don't die right away when you get knifed in non-vital parts, and it was a really ugly agony. So I was hip to the whole scene at the jump, and I had 7 brothers, younger brothers, and so we were seen by the major gangs around there, Florencia, Hickory Street, Watts Street, some of the other, as 8 gladiators for them. One day in the 9th grade, I was approached by some guys from Hickory Street, which was just down the corner, wanted us to get into the gang. The fight was on, and I kicked the hell out of both of them. And that garnered respect. I know it's kind of it's such a mentality that it's like in Venus or Mars. Most normal, good people can't fathom that kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking from personal experience. That, and then across the street was a gangster by the name of Spanky. And he was one of the 3 shot callers for La Florencia. And he took my family under his wing and protected us all those years.
Wow.
Autumn, I got 2 other books coming out. The other 2 books are The Journey to the LAPD, which is an impossible journey.
Yeah.
Insane, okay? In the 2nd grade, I had an undiagnosed industrial case of dyslexia and dyscalculia. Those are neurological problems where you can't make out words or numbers. At the same time in the 2nd grade, I was diagnosed with leg calvus perthes. So I had a brace on the left foot and a sling and crutches for 2 years. And I had a Forrest Gump full-on brace for another 2 years in an elevator shoe. And that was, from 2nd to the 6th grade. So I was the dumbest kid in school.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how children can be very, very mean.
Yes.
So what I did is that I acted up to refocus the light from my scholastic inabilities, because it was so humiliating and embarrassing, to being the cheeky one and getting in trouble all the time and getting these penances, having to write, "I shall not do this" on the chalkboard. I hold the Guinness Book of Records for penances. That was Catholic school. I'll tell you. The nuns used to beat me like a stepchild, so
Jeez.
but the beating was worth the people perceived and looked at me as being the cheeky, kind of exciting, kid, as opposed to being the really dumb kid. It was really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So all through grade school and high school, I was a D and F student. And I finally got sick of it in the 12th grade, dropped out. Then I got in trouble with the law 3 different times. And things were not looking good for me because I wanted to be a Los Angeles police officer from the time I was diagnosed at Children's Hospital in 1952, when Dr. Pierce picks me up, puts me in an examining table, looks right into my face, and he goes, "What do you want to be, little man, when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a policeman." And ever since then, I wanted to be a policeman.
Oh, wow. And I just can't even imagine. So like growing up the way that you grow up and facing everything, but that drive is what made you a policeman, and then obviously that drive is what got you into working what did you say? Was it like 7 divisions in 7 years?
Yeah.
Amazing. And so why did you tell me about why did you write this book?
Well, I was a fired cop, and that's a dishonor.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, all my life, honor is the cornerstone to the very cornerstone to a man's character and being and worth. And I've always looked at luminaries like Winston Churchill and Charlemagne and these really incredible people, and I just, I wanted to be like them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got fired from the Los Angeles Police Department, it was truly, you hear the word, there's no words. Well, there were no words in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
And the first few years were the worst. And like I was, before I got hired by Culver City PD, I was working these really non-menial security jobs, working in these dime a dance hotels, downtown LA, where we had all these girls from South and Central America. That's when we had all these low intensity wars, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. And I was to protect them from the gangsters and the predators and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And from being a homicide investigator with LAPD, so it was a hell of a choice. But anyhow, like I mentioned earlier, I've always petitioned East Chief of Police
Mm-hmm.
To get an opportunity, because most of the material that I got, exculpatory material that I got, documentation from the department, it took me years to finally get it. Once I got it, I put it into what they call a request for a hearing. I formally submitted it to all these different people, and they're not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I've written thousands of letters in the last 4 decades to every director, producer, agent in Hollywood, every newscast in the United States and around the world. And I've got a stack here I could show you that will just blow your mind. And it was Mark Bowden, the author of Black Hawk Down, one of the people that I wrote. And I actually got his card just right over here. He actually took what I did is I put a 4-page overview of my story that is just, nobody could believe it,
Mm-hmm.
but I have it documented, okay? So he answered me back and he goes, Al, I want to be honest with you. He says, listen, man, as incredible as your story is here, he says, nobody's going to touch it. You've been wasting your time all this time. Says, everybody has their babies.
Mm.
They're not going to take this unknown guy. The book there's not even a book here. He says, Al, I read your overview. And he says, right, pretty damn well. Write the book yourself.
Mm.
And it was that catalyst where I put pen to paper, and there's 3 books total. This first one came out first. And so, when I think back, when I was a copper, after I found out how the hell to handle the dyslexia and what have you, while I was processing to get and fighting in City Hall to get onto Los Angeles Police Department,
Yeah.
Everybody that was getting hired on then had some college. So I knew that I had to go to college, at least try to get a year or 2, maybe I'm associate of arts at 2 years. So I decided when I got back in 1973, I said, but that scared the hell out of me. Nothing really scares me. And I was lucky enough to get this one. She was an English teacher that helped me process through. And I told her about my concerns. She goes, Al, it sounds like dyslexia, that, one of the problems that you're having. Hell, I couldn't even pronounce the word at the time. She gave me some tests, and she goes, you got an industrial case. This is the problem, that letters and numbers jump in front of each other. She gave me some concepts on how to handle it. And I said, okay, fine. Make my chart out to, I want to graduate in 1.5 years. And she looked at me like I was completely mad. She goes, Al, you haven't been in school for 10 years. You're a D&F student. Right now, you can maybe read a level 4 or 5, 5th grade. No, not even A students coming out of high school are going to do it in 18 months. I said, yeah, but they're not Marine Corps Vietnam veterans.
Mm.
I graduated in 18 months and made the Alpha Gamma Honor Society.
Wow. What the hell? Like, what is in you? Because whatever it is, you need to give that. Like, you need to sell that shit. Like your drive. I mean, it's insane.
It's in the books. It's in the books. The first book, I'm kind of doing it backwards. The first book's kind of like The Godfather, where the Corleone family is already doing their mayhem, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next book is the journey from Sicily to New York to becoming the Corleone family. The next two books that come out are my journey from 1945, when I was born,
Yeah.
all the way through to finally get onto the last, to the LAPD. And they are as documented as this book is. I don't know how to answer this, but all of my life, starting back when I was like 9 years old, I got these little sleeves, like if you put some documents in it, and I got 4 or 5 little pieces of paper, report cards from 1954, all these and us, traffic tickets that I used to get, whatever. So I don't know to this day why I did that, but it was just pure gold, because I brought those documents out. It gave me kind of a time frame. When you pick out a certain item, you think of different other things that happened that you hadn't thought about in years. And I just started writing, so that's what the next 2 books are going to be about.
That's cool. And so as as our listeners are picking up this book, tell me, like, how did you come up with the title, LA's Last Street Cop?
Police in today's isms and sanctuary city mentalities are no longer able to do what we were able to do under the auspices of Gates. He was a proactive philosophy of policing. In other words, you go out, you study the crimes, you know where to look, you know the profiles of the bad guys, and you stop them before they rape, pillage, murder, and carry on. Today, there's no way in hell that you'll get out of your car and initiate an investigation and stop the bad guy before they kidnap your 6-year-old little daughter or 4-year-old son, before they go into this little moms and pop store, put a gun to somebody's head and blow their brains out,
Yep.
before they kidnap somebody, before they steal something.
Mm-hmm.
That I am LA's Last Street Cop. That era is gone. That's where it just kind of came to me.
I like it. And tell me what if, I mean, obviously we talked a lot about what we're going to learn from the book, but if you could summarize it.
If I can just real quick, I was just kind of looking at the time real quick, because I was the Zoom that we're on said that I only had a 40-minute thing. So we're over 40 minutes now, but apparently it didn't cut off. So if it cuts off, it's because of this Zoom thing. So
okay.
I don't know.
You're good. I think you're good because I'm hosting it. You're good.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know you had that kind of influence.
Yeah. I should. Can you summarize your book? Summarize, because my listeners, they're cops, they're first responders. So tell me why a cop should read your book.
Well, I don't only see it as police officers, but it's funny that I just got a message on Facebook thanking me that Al for writing. His dad was a Los Angeles police officer, and he says my dad has always been kind of like nonverbal about the whole thing. He's got high blood pressure. He's drinking a little bit too much, and he says, as I'm reading your book and your experience from the academy all the way up to what you went through, he says it gives us a crystal clear picture, like anything else that I've ever read, on what our men and women are experiencing as they go through this process for their communities throughout the United States. I wrote the book for 2 reasons. One is to basically to clear my name. And the second one is to give the public a unique, honest, incredible, documented, intense story of what our law enforcement officers are doing. And I think that obviously not everybody in the world will read it, but I truly, the things that I'm getting from all these people that have read the book anymore, they're going, we didn't realize that it happens like this. We didn't realize that management's like that. We didn't realize that. And of course, I talk about the deaths of my two best friends on the police department. I talk about some of the insanity that working in some of these incredible areas. And I actually got a review from New South Wales Police Department, and it is magic. And also, I spent 5 months there, and I went through all 5 of the 6 states and the 2 territories. And I went, of course, from copper to copper to copper to police station to police station. Fed them a couple of LAPD stories, and it went completely nuts. And the New Scotland Yard magazine that comes out every 2 months is doing a whole spread on the book as well. So and I've driven from Dover to Inverness twice. I've seen more of the UK and more of the of their history than probably most people in the United Kingdom. I know I start to kind of get a little peripheral when you ask these questions, but I have so damn much stuff. It's hard to harness it,
You've seen a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of stuff. That's for sure. Well, and so where can we find this book?
You can get it on Amazon and just about every other place where you buy a book today.
Okay.
You can also go to the webpage laststreetcop.com.
Got it.
But just as effective would be is that if you go to Amazon, because the world is buying their products from Amazon.
Yeah, so, that's true.
And it's a simple title to remember, Ellie's Last Street Cop. But it also talks about my 2 officer-involved shootings, which were very, very, very different from what you normally see. And so the intensity is there's no lack of intensity, but it's not just Al Moreno. I speak about several of my other brothers and sisters. I talk about the 2 deaths of my 2 best friends. I talk about my off-duty time, which is got a lot of sex and a lot. It's an ecosystem, that harnesses everything that was going on from 1975 to 1982. It's like look at it, see it, smell it, touch it.
Wow. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for, our listeners to dive on in. As we wrap this up, anything you want to leave Sheepdog Nation with before we check Mastermind members, see if they have questions?
What I'd like to do is look for some sort of some understanding and appreciation of what the overwhelming majority of our men and women are doing for the United States. We only got 680,000 policemen policing 328 million people. And it isn't like what too many people are looking at today regarding this horrific murder that happened, last week.
Yeah.
I want to tell your viewers that police are your friends. They'll put their lives on the line for you and your family and your children. And I hope that everybody takes a breath back or step back, tries to look at kind of some perspective. And in the process, we got to weed out these assholes that have no business on the job because they crucify.
Yes.
And what they did was repugnant, inexcusable, no excuse, end of story. So, to your audience, they're a good crew of people. They really are.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being with us, Al. And Mastermind members, do we have any questions, Dawn? Do you have anything you want to say?
No, I don't mean you. It was amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I'm definitely going to pick up your book. I didn't have your book.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just interesting to think about everything you said today and how it was when you were a cop and then how things are now. My dad's retired FBI. So I'm both sides. Like you see what you're
All right,
saying.
so
Like,
what
yeah,
I'm
they're
saying-
there. Police are there, to help us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and then so I don't know, but
There's a lot of material to absorb. You're probably going to go
Yeah,
later. You'll go
right,
lay
yeah.
down for about a half hour after this
yeah.
podcast.
But I mean, you were right there in the middle of all of it, like the Watts riots, like all the Rodney King stuff.
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say
all
Rodney
that.
King
I
too,
mean,
right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
What would be maybe your one biggest thing that you would give advice to officers now, like how to handle like being hated in the news, How to deal with that?
Yeah, these things occur from time to time. I think it's been like 28 years since the Rodney King thing. And to all my brothers and sisters, there will be times like really trying times like this, but stay true to your heart, continue doing your service for our communities. Time will bring some sense and normality back to the United States. The U.S. just has this history of bouncing back. I think that all of us as Americans, regardless of your color, your creed, or whatever, I think that in the last analysis, this is truly a brilliant, wonderful, good nation, and we're going to be fine. We really are going to be fine. It's just got to push through this hell for the time being.
Right.
Well, thank you, Al. I love that because you're leaving us with positivity. I love that. Sheepdog Nation. The Al's website is going to be right down in the show notes, but go onto Amazon, go pick up his book. It's called LA's Last Street Cop. Clearly, this guy's got stories. He's got lots to tell us. It'll be a good read. Al, thank you so much for being here. Sheepdog Nation, I'll see you next time.
They buried me in the water and I came, I knew. Ha ha. Now I'm baptized in blue. I'm a winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, never winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. They bury me in the water in the Holy Ghost. I came out with a badge and gun and a heart that said never run. I signed up for a job you wouldn't dare to do. This ain't no green screen movie, don't compare the two. We look at your actions in the elements and everything relevant. If they line up, prepare to pay the consequence. You do dirt, you get cuffed, no bluff. It's ignorant to think we will shoot with your hands up if you the police. You feel the world is against you, like every call you go to, people trying to tempt you. Well, Hail Mary, Hail Mary, Hail Mary. I ride on the devil, I ain't scary, and I ain't worried. You want my life, come take it, it's gonna be a fight. I take you to the light, like Will and Bright. I wouldn't expect you to understand what I do, only the thin blue line, cause they baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, I'm a winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, never winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I can't explain the pain when I see a name on the wall. All I feel is rage, put me in a cage, let me brawl. Sometimes I can't help but cry, like why did he die? I know it was him, but it could have been I. What about the kids? What about the spouse? Yeah, now who gon' put food inside them babies' mouth? It's a bigger picture when the officer down. Domino effect, Blue Nation, family, country, and town. The media don't cover us. Well, maybe Fox, cause MSNBC and CNN surely don't care about cops. Politicians more concerned about protecting the legal instead of laying the law down and protecting the people. Let me get off my soapbox before I curse. I don't seen way too many cops riding in hearse. Well, I wouldn't expect you to understand what I do, only the thin blue line, cause they baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, I'm a winner, never quit. I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit. I'm a warrior with a mission, I'm gonna complete it. If that means being deleted, I live with the credence. I do this for the combat vets and Leos. When I'm suited, ready to go, it's either friend or foe. Only Lord knows what my future's in store. I only kill with the hope to see more, so God don't close that door. If I take a life, it's him or me, with the hopes to survive, not bigotry. I go in situations that you cannot imagine, deal with things that you cannot fathom. Know it, but I'd rather fight for a cause than live for nothing. So when you read my headstone, you know I died for something. You hypersensitive, she complain by justified force. You blame the cops first, that don't work, you blame the courts. But I wouldn't expect you to understand what I do, only the thin blue line, cause they baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, I'm a winner, never quit, I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit, see, I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a fighter, never winner, never quit, I refuse to lose. I got heart and I got grit, see, I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue. I'm a warrior that's been baptized in blue.